Welcome back, everybody. It's another episode of Life Coach Labs. I'm your host, Chris Angel, as always. And today I have my friend, Glodine Champion. Hi, Glodine.
Hi.
So good to see you.
You too. You
Thank
too.
you for wearing yellow today. I mean, that's like right on brand.
Oh,
It's so good. And you look good in yellow.
thank you.
Yeah.
It is my brand.
Tell me about,
And yours.
tell everybody about what you do professionally. Let's just start there because a little relatedness there. Yeah.
So I use my spiel as I'm a transformational leader who specializes in
Yeah.
personal growth,
I like that.
leadership development and diversity, equity and inclusion, coaching and consulting. And here's why I said it in that order is because DEI or diversity, equity and inclusion, that work is not possible without leadership development. Like if leaders have not actively focused and committed to becoming leaders, not bosses and managers,
Yep.
then this doesn't work. And it doesn't work. And leadership development doesn't work without personal growth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those two, as you know, people have to be committed to the personal growth in order to become better leaders.
Yeah.
So I kind of married the three together. So the people that I work with, whether they're in a leadership position, like a titled position, because I don't believe that leadership is about your title. I think it's about how you show up in the world and the intention that you have. So, I work to make sure that people are become leaders and then grow and make a conscious decision to continue growing because we need it in the world.
And you do that work. Does that work primarily with corporations?
It's with corporations. So I've been talking about love since June of 2020.
Wow.
And in the corporate space, and just as recently as a month or so ago, somebody had contracted me to create a survey to assess the culture of the organization, but specifically their leaders.
Yeah.
And Steve Farber is a friend of mine. You know who Steve Farber is?
I know of him. I've never met him.
So he wrote a book called Love is Just Damn Good Business. And it is, right? So I love to say that because even though I haven't quite published my book on that, it helps to just talk about other leaders who believe love is possible. And this, so the question that I asked in the survey is, are you doing the work that you love? And one of the guys on the call was HR, and he said, we can't talk about love. That's an HR violation. And my head almost popped off my shoulders.
Yeah, what did you say to that?
Yeah, I said, okay, so let me ask you, are you doing the work that you love? And he said, yeah. And I said, so it's easy. Like, it's easy to make that connection. You're either enjoying what you do or you're not. But I didn't know what to say beyond that because sometimes you got to read the room.
Oh, yeah.
And it didn't seem like he was going to engage with me to that extent. So I had to leave it alone. But inside I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, right. Yes, I mean, you bump into these culture. I think that's anytime you're in transformational work, there is a transformation we're leading. We're here to take it from here to somewhere else. And, congratulations, you get to bump up against the thing you're trying to transform,
Yes.
Hilarious.
But I wish that I had thought about this while I was on the phone on this Zoom call with him. But sometimes people catch me off guard. Like I didn't expect that, but we were on. If it had just been the two of us, I probably would have dug in a little deeper. But I didn't want to put him on the spot, so I had to let it go. But one of the things that I say to people is, okay, if love, that 4-letter word love, is a problem, then how about you look at it from a different perspective? So I have created an acronym for love, which is love in action. So value learning, foster open-mindedness, embrace vulnerability, and practice empathy. Like if you can't look at love from the agape, or because you can't separate romantic from agape, then how about if you just look at the practicality of learning open-mindedly with vulnerability and empathy, or listening that way, or leading that way.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. I feel like sometimes we have to find creative ways into common ground for the distinction, because clearly you're distinguishing something here. You're taking love, which is sort of muddied by all the cultural stuff, and but we're distinguishing the pieces of that. So take me into, because you've got this the corporate inclusion work you do, but then there's this transformational in a transformational way. But you've got this thing about love, which feels like a I mean, it's related, but it's a whole other conversation that you are leading in the world.
Yeah. So
what is that?
I'm gonna say, okay, I'm gonna try not to take forever and tell this story, but it's part of the journey, right? So in June of 2020, I got a text from my cousin that said they're rioting in my neighborhood. And I was like, why? And talk about head popped off. She was like, what? Because I had no idea what was going on. I don't watch the news intentionally. I'm disconnected, and I was not on social media. And so she said, you didn't hear what happened to George Floyd? And I was like, who is that? And then she got even more frustrated, and she said, go look up George Floyd. So in the looking up of George Floyd, I found out about Breonna Taylor, and then found out about Ahmaud Arbery, and then found out about the incident with the Amy Cooper woman in Central Park. And I was like, what has happened in this country? How did we go back 60 years? Right? I mean, things weren't perfect, but I felt like we were making progress. And it made me sad. It made me sad because I am normally active in the Black community. Like, I know what's happening locally and also across the country. And so I had to quiet myself and ask God, the universe, what can I do? Like, I felt like I needed to do something. And the answer that came back was love. So I was like, I could do that. That's easy. So I got back on social media and I was like, okay, y'all, this is what's going on in the country. We need to move through this. We're going to do it with love. We need to love each other. La, la, la. And people were like, whatever. I mean, they were engaging because it's me. And I think that my friends know me and love me. And so they were like, all right, Glodine, whatever. But there were also people going, how am I supposed to love someone who is willing to treat me a certain way? And I had started walking around telling people I love them. Like this made me start thinking, oh, wait a minute. And then it was and I was going in the restaurant, or I have a deli that I go to. And so I would go in there, once a week or whatever, and hand the dude some money and say, pay for the next 10 people's lunch or whatever. And then it was like, if you keep doing that, you're going to go broke. And what change will you have affected? It was like the universe kept saying, all right, yeah, we told you love, but this is not the superficial. You need to dig into this. And so the first thing I had to do was, if I need to teach and spread love in the world, then it starts with me. And when I look in the mirror, can I say I love myself? And at the time, the answer was a flat out no. I wasn't eating healthy. I wasn't taking care of myself. I was drinking a lot. I was smoking. I was doing all the things that do not indicate that I loved who I am. But I was also in a really kind of dark place myself, just life, letting life beat me up, if you will.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, so if I got to start with self, then the first thing I got to do is make a commitment to myself. When I think about how much I've loved people, relationships, and other people, what did that look like? Can you do that for yourself? So the first thing I did was made a commitment and got married to myself.
That post, by the way.
Yeah. So this June will be 2 years of this. And I wrote vows. And then it was like, okay, now you got to live up to those vows. I was married before I can say I lived up to my vows to a certain extent, but I'm obviously single again. So how do I make a lifetime commitment so this stays top of mind? And I started having self-love Sundays, so that I had one day a week to remind myself that this coming week, these are the things you need to keep top of mind. And so it kind of evolved.
Yeah.
And then in 2021, my book came out. I was working with the client, and it was like, okay, I felt like the calling I was being called to do this in a bigger way. So I spent half the year focusing on getting my book kind of out in the world. And then I spent a lot of the time running from my purpose, right? Because it was scary. Like 20, the rest of 2021, it was fun telling people I love you and stuff like that. Um, but I had a moment on the beach
Mm.
where I saw this couple, and I had been telling people I love you every day. And I saw this couple coming to, well, my dog saw the couple. And so I stopped them just so I could say I love you. And they were like, thank you. And the crazy thing is nobody looked at me like I was crazy.
Hmm.
I mean, people maybe didn't say I love you back, but they received it. And that was like, that's half the battle, right?
Hmm.
But this particular couple, the husband said to me, I thought you stopped me. I thought you stopped us because of my hat. And I looked up and he had on a MAGA hat.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, I didn't even notice your hat. But now that you've pointed it out, I got a question. And he was like, okay. I said, so when was America great? Like when you think about America in its totality, when was it great? Because if you're going to make America great again, who are you making it great for? Because if it's not great for everybody, then what are we doing?
Mm.
And he said, I'd never thought about it like that.
Mm.
And he was aware enough to know about what had happened with George Floyd. And so he said, I guess it's not great for everyone. And I said, yeah, exactly. And he said, but yet you're walking around telling people you love them. And I said, yeah, because we need to have these conversations. Like,
Wow.
had I not been in the love mindset and I noticed your hat, I probably would have kept walking. But because my dog came over to you, that to me immediately said, you must be good people because she knows, like dogs know better than we do.
Yeah.
And you engaged in the conversation with me by pointing out your hat. So the question to you also is, what made you point out your hat? And he said, because he gets a lot of flack for
Mm.
wearing it. And, I didn't want to question like, okay, well then why do you keep wearing it? Because we do what we do, right?
Yeah.
So that conversation though made me see, okay, this can't be that love. Like you need to figure out a way to embrace love and then also help people embody love in their personal space because those individuals go into a workspace.
Yeah.
And if they can take the love first of themselves, right? Because the other thing is I learned you got to love you so that you can truly love other people. That
Yeah.
if you can teach people to do that, then they go into the workspace and they make their workspaces better. They become better leaders. They become better team members. The culture of the organization gets better
Yeah.
because it starts with self.
How
So that's
does
kind of the long version of
Yeah,
that.
no, that's amazing. And how when you think about the love conversation as its own body of work,
Mm-hmm.
do you have a sense of what it is? Like, what are you gonna do? What are you doing? Is it just saying I love you to more people? And
No.
like what's it look like?
So it looks like I have a program that I call Lean Into Love,
Mm-hmm.
and the love is the practice learning. And you practice learning by actively listening and embodying servant leadership. So teaching people how, in a communication and accountability space, how do I become a better learner by listening better? Because part of most of the things that keep us separated is our inability to communicate with each other and hold each other accountable.
Yeah.
Helping, and then the it's a 3-week, because we're virtual. I'd rather do it in person than it would be a full, 1-day thing that we
Yeah.
could really jump into. But it's about teaching people how to learn and how to communicate better and how to hold each other accountable, because that is an act of love. Like accountability shouldn't be punitive. It should be done in a way that makes people feel like you care enough about me that you want to protect me from myself.
Yeah.
And then what does open-mindedness look like? And how do I take that? How do I become better at being willing to listen to new ideas? Like I know a lot of leaders have a hard time listening to their team. Like you hired somebody because of their expertise in a certain area, but then you don't listen to their ideas. Like you want them to do it your way.
Yeah.
And then vulnerability, like the definition in and of itself says that it's a sign of weakness, when in reality it's a sign of strength.
Right.
So how do I help you become a better leader? By teaching you how to be vulnerable. And I use Brene Brown, like, what's the point of reinventing the wheel when she's done such a great job
Yeah,
of
she's amazing.
researching the strength of vulnerability, right?
Yep. Yep.
And then teaching people how to practice empathy. Because here's the thing, the especially in the DEI space, trying to help people understand the disconnect between cultures, because I don't believe, that's the other thing I want to help people understand, is race is a construct that is created so racism has a place to breathe. But if we could move through race and connect with each other culturally and at the heart, then we're not dealing with each other because of our differences. We're recognizing that we're all, like, there's what, 8.7 billion species on planet Earth. We are one species. There's no black or white Homo sapiens. We're all Homo sapiens,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So helping people understand that to have empathy for me doesn't mean that you have to understand what it means to be Black in this country. It means that you have to be able to have empathy with maybe mistreatment. Like, everybody can empathize with somebody who's been treated badly. Everyone can empathize with someone who has been disrespected, right? So helping you take I think that the challenge is people want to say that they can't empathize because they don't know what it means to be Black. No, you don't. I don't know what it means to be white, but I know what it is to be disrespected or treated badly. I can empathize with that.
Yeah.
So that's the Lean Into Love workshop, is to teach people that. And then there's a cultural initiative that goes along. Like, either you do the workshop or you can do a culture initiative that kind of works through the whole company. And then I like to teach people. I believe in teaching the man to fish rather than fishing for him, so that you can continue this. Because the challenge, especially again with DEI, is we have been talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion in this country since 1866, when the first Civil Rights Act was created. But we're still having this issue. Why? Because we keep doing the same thing over and over, year after year, expecting different results. That is the definition of insanity, yes?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to I have created a new approach so that we go beyond making white people feel villainized and people of color feel victimized, right? Because then that doesn't bring us together either.
Right.
So, and then I also do speaking engagements to talk about how you lean into love from a practical standpoint.
Wow. Wow. How did you find this? So, if you think about like a life coach, we all have important work to do. I believe everybody has a particular, you can call it a calling if you want. There's an expression that's inside of you that's trying to come out and encourage others. How did it, I guess, how did it come up for you?
You mean, how did I get to these programs or develop it, or?
Yeah, I mean, like, as a body of work, like there was I'm going to love myself. And then, but then it sort of became like, it turned into a workshop. And now there's a thing that if you did this for the rest of your life and you look back, you'd be like, look at this body of work about leaning into love. When did it shift from just being this is really good for me to oh my God, this is what the world needs, and how do I put it in a container that can help it grow?
I think back in June of 2020, when I asked, the seed was planted, and I don't know if I said this, I think I did, that I ran from it for a long time. So I think this was always in me, because it was a kind of slow evolution of me running and then being pulled back into it. So I run from it, and then somebody calls me and says, "Can you help me do X?" And then in the span of helping, maybe I was coaching them, maybe I was mentoring them, whatever it was they asked me to do, which was really not in a business space. It was like a friend reached out or something, or a friend recommended me to someone. And then the work that I needed to do with this person was all around helping them be open-minded and vulnerable and have empathy and learn and listen. And it just kept, even the acronym started off as listen, learn, and lead open-minded, lead with vulnerability and empathy, but people couldn't remember it. Like, I would say that to someone and then they couldn't remember it. So it's kind of, that even has evolved. So I think it was just, once I stopped running from it. Oh, and because I was running from it, then I got this, I'm going to say, I was called to do this. I drove cross country to my brother's wedding.
Mm.
And while I was intentionally planning the drive to his wedding, I was not planning on talking to people about love. And that idea came to me through someone else.
Mm.
She said, love is your thing. Like you of all people can get people to talk about love in a meaningful way. So
Mm.
you should do this when you go cross country.
Yeah.
And I was like, I am not doing that. Especially because I was driving to the South. No way.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
then she planted the seed, and then it was like the little voices. I know this might sound crazy, but
Mm-mm.
it kept coming up, like,
Yeah.
do this. And so I made a sign, a handwritten sign that said, I believe love is the bridge that connects us.
Yeah.
And I got some business cards made. So by the time I live in Monterey, and it took me a couple of days to get all this together. So
Yeah.
by the time I got to Albuquerque, New Mexico, I had all my tools so I could start talking to people.
Yeah.
And when I got to Amarillo, Texas, I decided, all right, well, I got to start having this conversation. And I stopped this guy at Palo Duro Canyon State Park, which is like a mini Grand Canyon in Amarillo, Texas.
Yeah.
And I went up to him and started. I can't remember if it was I asked him about music. I think I did because I initially my plan was to talk to people about music because that's the universal language.
Mm.
Love is too, but music is easier
Easier. Yeah.
to engage the conversation. And I said, what's his favorite music? And he couldn't think of anything, but he could think about what he didn't like.
Mm.
And then he said he didn't like rap, he didn't like bluegrass, and I can't remember the other thing. And in my mind, I was like, did he say rap because I'm black?
Mm.
Like, okay, I get that you don't like rap. And so I said, don't focus on that. Focus on getting him to say what he does like.
Mm.
So I kept like kind of coaching him to find the thing that he does like.
Huh.
And he said he liked spiritual music and classical music.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh. And then he said, my son plays cello. And I said, oh, I played cello.
Hmm.
Right. I could tell he was a little uncomfortable because he didn't quite know what to say to me.
Right.
So now we're talking about cello music and who's your favorite composer, and we're having a full-on conversation. And he's brought his son into the conversation and his wife and his in-laws. And I said, okay, so here's the thing. I need to help people understand that the way we connect is by staying in the conversation.
Mm. Mm.
And had I let him say he didn't like, he couldn't find the thing that he liked, and I kind of threw up my hands and said, well, I don't want to talk to this guy, we
Right.
never would have had that connection.
Yeah. That's
And
good.
and I kept practicing it the more I talked to people. Because one of the things that we
Yeah.
do as human beings is other each other, right? We want to point out our differences rather than just find a way to connect. But
Yeah.
I realized if I stay in the conversation,
Mm.
magical things happen. And that's love too, right?
And you were discovering this. It sounds like you're discovering this as you're living it, rather than it wasn't like you got the huge download, like this is the whole answer. I'm going to go
Oh
teach
yeah.
the world the answer.
Yeah.
You were like, I'm going to have to talk to this guy about. I mean, was it that way? Were you just
Yeah.
confident to everybody you walked up to, or did you have some doubt or some I don't want to talk to that guy? And
And that made me do it anyway. I did
then
have that.
you got to do it. Go do it. Go do it.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I still got you.
Siri was gonna tell me, Alexa was gonna tell me to drink water. Yes, everyone that I spoke to, I had that. And it was because I was making myself talk to people that I wouldn't normally. Like I would normally engage with people who looked like they would welcome having a
Yeah.
conversation with me. But
Mm.
in the current racial climate that we're living in, I had to be cautious. But then I thought, you're not doing this. This obviously is not happening so that you can be safe. You're doing this so you can push through this, because I had my own level of fear.
Yeah.
But the best experience I had was with a guy in Arizona. I didn't have my sign, I didn't have my cards, but I was trying to find a car wash. And I saw this guy, but he looked like, if you can imagine, like the scariest motorcycle dude. Like if you
Yeah.
could imagine the scariest motorcycle gang and the leader of that gang, that's what this guy looked like.
Uh-huh.
So I asked him if he lived in Arizona, and he asked me why. And I said I was looking for a car wash. And he said, well, I don't live here, but I'm going in to pay for my gas. So I'll find out where one is. And I was like, okay. I pump my gas, and he comes out And he says, found a car wash. It's just down the street and blah, blah, blah. And I said, wow, thanks. And then he sees my license plate that I'm from California. And he says, are you coming or going? And I said, oh, I'm driving across country and I'm going to talk to people about love. And I don't even know why I'm saying this to him. It's just coming out. And then he goes, what kind of love? And I said, agape love, the universal love that we should have for each other. And he said, like the love I just showed you by going to get the car wash. And I was like, exactly that kind of love.
Wow. And
now we're having this amazing conversation about, he's telling me good luck and I hope people talk to you because, just this. And then we hugged like it's COVID and we hugged because we had a connection. And so I was like, okay, this is it. This is what people need to get.
Wow.
But yeah, it's been unfolding.
Yeah. Talk to me about that. Because I feel like a lot of times when people think of leadership, it comes off like it occurs as I need to know the answers. I need to have results. I need to be on there's some pedestal I'm not on that if I were on, I would be more valid. And I feel like as you're describing the unfolding of your journey, I know it's true in my journey, when you find a thing that you're trying to bring the world that the world doesn't yet have, there is no answer. There is no map. There is no, like, you're pioneering, you're servant leading, so walk me through, like, what is that kind of leadership? Like, how do we lead that when nobody's been there yet?
It starts with trust. You have to trust that whatever this message you received, no matter how scary it may be, no matter how big it may seem, that message came to you for a reason, right? And I think that's why I ran from it, because I was like, I'm not doing that. And then, but I was still doing this other work that really didn't have anything to do with the work I'm doing now. Yeah. And then all my safety nets went away. And I kept doing that work because it was like, well, at least I'm going to get paid doing this. I'm not going to risk that. Right. And then those safety nets went away and it was like, okay, I need to trust this. Wow. And I think that the sooner we trust it, the more opportunities show up, right? So I spent half of 2021 running and it was like, I didn't get as many opportunities. And then I did that road trip. And the opportunities came from like the sky, it seems like. So yeah, I believe it's all about trusting. And I even had a moment where I was in Atlanta and I went to the Dr. King's National Park, and his tomb is there, and on his side of it, it says, free at last, thank God Almighty, I'm free at last. But on Coretta Scott King's side, it said, faith, love, and hope, and the greatest of these is love. And I'm standing there looking at this going, okay, but why am I the one with the love message? Like, seriously, to myself. And questioning this whole thing still, right? This is 6 months in, still doing this. And I heard a man's voice say, stay the course. It wasn't Dr. King's voice. I don't know who said it to me, but it was like, oh, okay. Like when this happens, you have to stop questioning it, right? And I turned around because right in front of Dr. King and Coretta Scott King's tomb is the eternal flame. And when I turned around, that flame went, wow. And I was like, okay, I'm done questioning this. And so what are we now, the beginning of the 4th month of the year? Yeah. And the opportunities for speaking engagements, more clients. I just partnered with a company that does personality assessments. And because I believe this all starts with self, it was like the perfect marriage. So I was like, okay, I get it. Like I had to trust. All of this comes back to trust. Yeah. And then once you trust, you open yourself up for whatever shows up, and stepping into it creates more opportunities for you. Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to ask if there was like there's the trusting and then there's the going, there's the doing, is there the way I see it, because it's how it was for me, is to lead a conversation. I feel like there is a conversation to have that without words, without a way to connect. You could have a calling, I guess you could express the calling through art. I guess you could do it through interpretive dance. I guess you could do it through a practice like Reiki or massage. Like there are, of course, there are things you could do, but I think to change agreements in the world, there is a conversation attached. So to me, that's what it looks like. It's trusting, surrendering, and then it's leading a conversation. For you, what would you say is the doing of it? It doesn't have to be my answer. It could be whatever.
Yeah, no, but it is that, like, you do have to do. If you don't do, then I believe that I believe we all come here with a purpose.
Yeah.
And if we don't, and we get ideas, we get nuggets for that purpose, and we either step into them or it goes to somebody else. I believe that now.
Yeah.
So yeah, you got to do, and it does have to be in conversation. It has to be like I talked to 50 people across the country, give or take. Some of them I took pictures of, and some of them I just talked to, but not one person, even in the deepest part of the South, where I was most afraid, not one person turned me away. Wow. So the fact that people were willing to have a conversation about love means that there is a possibility to change the narrative that we're currently in to one of love.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yes. I love that, because I feel like changing the narrative. I mean, that's the work of transformation. Like, in other words, our current state lives in a narrative. And if you're into transformational work, you see a different narrative possible, or you live in a different narrative, but the world doesn't. And you're trying to invite the world into a different narrative. And that only happens, I think, through a conversation. However you choose to do that. You could drive across country and talk to 50 people. You could start a podcast. You could write a blog. You could write a book. There's a lot of ways you could do it, but how would you describe that way of leading? Like, I'm not sure exactly where my question is coming from, but I feel like it's a leadership conversation we're having. And I feel like there's a lot of people with a skewed idea of what leadership is. And here we are talking about trusting and then doing. How do you do that kind of leadership?
So I'm just going to use the definition of what a transformational leader is, because I think it's so awesome. That's why I consider myself, and have been considered a transformational leader, is because transformational leaders are self-aware, they're open-minded, they're willing to be vulnerable, they're proactive instead of reactive, and they're like, how do I say this? They're willing to lead by example. They're willing to, that's part of vulnerability though, but they're willing to make a mistake and take ownership of it rather than place blame. Yeah. And I think that people need to understand that leadership is, again, not tyranny, right? It's not leading by fear and tyranny. It's truly about being transparent and authentic. And I think we have this misconstrued view of what authenticity is, right? You can't fake authenticity.
Literally.
You have to literally, and you have to literally be willing to show the flaws, because we're not perfect. We're all imperfect.
Could you say
that's perfectly imperfect?
That's a part of, that you would say that's a part of leadership. That's the vulnerability part, the willingness to, I think, in fact, if you looked at it as it's not a requirement, but it's almost not leadership if you don't honor the flaw. Like, look at the flaw, because if you diss it, if you pretend it's not there, you give no room for others to have their flaws. Like, so if I can lead by embracing my flaws, I'm actually letting others have permission to embrace their flaws, and all of a sudden the conversation changes.
Exactly. Oh, and the other thing is, the driving force is to be there for others, be in service of others. If you have a team, you want your team to be more successful than you are. You don't take credit for their work. You give them credit. You lift them up. I think that's the best way to say it, is that you lift others up.
Yeah. Well, if you were talking to someone who is a great life coach. They're a good practitioner. Like they know how to coach someone to wholeness, to healing. And they feel this recurring thought that keeps chirping at them like, hey, you should drive across the country and tell people that you've never met that you love them. What would you, like what would you say to somebody that has a bigger life's work inside of them that's trying to come out and they're just afraid to take it on?
I would say coach themselves like I had to. Coach
Yes.
themselves out of it. Like
Coach
part
yourself.
of me doing myself, and it really, I hate to be repetitive with this, but it really does come back to self-love, self-awareness, and self-knowledge, right? Feeling that you have this calling means looking inward, right? Why am I afraid? What am I afraid of? And how do I move through it? So it is really coaching yourself. And I think that really good coaches are able to do that if they can take their ego out of it and approach it from a place of a willingness to grow, right? So if we can coach other people into becoming better versions of themselves, I think that our first task is to do that for ourselves and not run from the thing. I mean, you're talking to somebody who did both things, right? Ran from it, coached myself through it, ran from it. So yeah.
Yeah, me too. And I mean, the follow-up question that came up for me when you said that was, what's the thing that gets in the way? Because you're right, like coaches, I think life coaches are very self-aware. They've done a lot of personal work. They've done a lot of personal development, a lot of healing. So it would make sense that we could coach ourselves. And yet I think there are a lot of people who are self-aware, who have done a lot of healing, who are not trusting in this bigger work that wants to come through with that. Like, why is that? What's happening there?
Fear. False evidence appearing real. I can't do this. Imposter syndrome. Who's going to listen to me? Somebody else has already done this. Why do I need to put myself out there? Because I'm saying all these things that I also felt. I mean, I think I had imposter syndrome for months, which is why I was running from it. Why is anybody going to listen to me?
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't they though?
What was the thing that got you to the other side of that? Was it the Martin Luther King
cross-country trip?
The trip, and then the trip,
and then hearing "Stay the Course." Yeah. I think I needed to see that people would have a conversation with me about love. Because before I did this, even in February of 2021, I did a keynote at the Extreme Leadership Experience. And when I came off the stage, I got this idea that I needed to do. It was called Love is the Bridge. Oh, it was going to be, let's talk about love, and then whatever city I was in. That came to me in February of 2021. And then I didn't do it. And then it came up to me again. But now it's like, I'm ready to do this. So I get it. Like, but I wasn't ready at that time because I didn't know how people were going to receive it. But now my big thing is I have this Change the World project, which is to end racism and replace it with love. And part of that is doing this thing called Let's Talk About Love. So the first one that I want to do is here in Monterey. Let's talk about love, Monterey.
I keep hearing this. I don't know if it feels playful to you, but there's a playfulness or a playing with the thing, that there's a, okay, well, let me go across country and see if I even want to do it. And there's like a, I'm stepping the toe out a little bit to see, you're interacting with it. You're just like, I mean, there's a little running, but then there's also some cooperation, maybe on your terms in the beginning, but like, I think that's so healthy to explore the thing that you feel called to do. And you can take baby steps to the elevator. That's all right.
Yeah. You just got to take those steps.
Yeah. That's really good. I know you wrote a book this last year, Salmon Croquettes. Is that the name of the book?
That is the name of the book.
Yeah.
I had one right here.
Was it autobiographical? Was it?
No.
No.
It's a coming of age story about a young Black girl struggling with her sexuality.
Yeah.
And it's set in 1965 in Watts, Los Angeles, because it's also historical fiction about the Watts riots.
Okay.
The idea came to me in 2006 when I was at Mills College. And because well, it used to be an all-girls school. The graduate program is both, but there were girls that couldn't be out at home, Black girls specifically that couldn't be out at home. And I was like, why are we still in this situation? What if I wrote a book where we get to see a girl who doesn't have the stereotypical, things that people want to believe that's why you're gay? What if she had a 2-parent household and they didn't live in the hood and they didn't, there wasn't a struggle. Now you have to deal with this child in her approachable state, right? You can't marginalize it. How would people receive her? And I added the Watts riots in because I used to live in Watts in the 80s. And the community that I lived in, which is the community that she lives in, was a very close-knit community. And I wanted people to remember that the Black community used to be really close-knit and we looked out for each other. When I was growing up, adults had the right to parent us as much as our parents did. And also because the media made it appear as if the Watts riots happened because it was the hottest day of summer and just Black folks went crazy. Like that's always mentioned in the news story. It was the hottest day of summer, as if that's supposed to mean something. No, that's not why they did that. They did it because of police brutality and poverty and racism. So I wanted to write that story, but in a way where people could receive it without feeling some kind of way about it. And I will just say this: I have a friend. He's 65. He's a white guy, and he read my book. And he called me one day and said, "Your book changed my life."
Wow.
And I was like, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah, because you made me." When I was reading it, I was initially going, "Well, white people didn't do that," and I'll just have to accept that that's her perception. And then he would read something else and go, "Well, we did that because you did this." Like white people did this because Black people did that. And then he said he stopped reading my book and went and did a little research.
Wow.
And got a better understanding of what I was saying in the book actually happened.
Wow.
And then he had to say, yeah, this actually happened.
Wow.
We did do some really crappy things. But he said that my book not only opened his eyes, but also made him have this love that he didn't recognize that was within him to have, for a culture of people that he misunderstood, even though he grew up with Black people. He had one of his best friends was Black growing up, but there were dynamics that he didn't understand that he now understands after reading my book. And I was like, wow. Thanks.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, we're full circle in the conversation now, because we're back to empathy, right? Versus race, versus a dividing context. There's a context of I can hear myself in this, or I can do some research and I can feel for what others have been through. Like that's exactly what you're talking about. The empathy of humanity.
Exactly. And that's a lot of people, most of the people that wrote reviews said that, like talked about the love that they felt and the love that they experienced. So yeah, it was great.
If people want to learn more about salmon croquettes, pick up a copy, where can they go to get that?
They can go to any book reseller, or they can go on Amazon to get it faster.
There you go. Nice.
Yeah.
Good. And do you have a website about your work in love, lean into love, or any of that?
I do. They can go to glodinchampion.com.
Nice. Perfect. I'll put that up in the show notes. That's so good. Well, Glodine, I love being in your presence and the work that you're doing. And I love the humanness in which you're leading the work. Like it just is, it's not pretentious, which I think sometimes leadership things can be, or at least the facade of it. Right. But it's just, it's organic, it's real, it's raw. And I want more of that kind of leadership in the world. So
thank you
for being so willing to share that.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I don't realize how much I miss you until I sit here.
Thanks, Glodine. Awesome. Well, thanks for being here. I love you.
I love you back.
Okay. Thanks, Glodine.
Thanks.
Well, that's it, gang. Thanks for listening to this episode of Life Coach Labs. Before I let you go, I want to invite you to two things. One, there is a companion Facebook group to this show called Life Coach Labs. Go to Facebook and search Life Coach Labs. You can see it here on the screen. If I scroll through, this is a companion group to the show because it gives me a chance to get to know you. I want to know you as much as you listen to me and my guests. I want to know you. I want to hear about your important work. I want to support you. So please head over to Facebook and join the free Life Coach Labs Facebook group. Number 2, let's jump over to the next window here. If you are looking to create recurring revenue in as little as 4 hours a week, I have documented my community model, right? How do you do community? How do you build a membership model for your coaching that incubates the people you want to serve and do it in as little as 4 hours a week? You can head over to lifecoachlabs.com/model. You can see it right here on the screen, lifecoachlabs.com/model, and learn more about how to create recurring revenue in as little as 4 hours a week. Thanks for hanging out with me in this episode. And until next time, be well.